I didn't plan to make a scene. If anything, I was hoping for closure, maybe even peace. But when you walk into a room already written out of the story, sometimes silence isn't the noble choice, it's just complicity. The place was fancy in a quiet, judgmental kind of way. Polished silverware, marble-topped tables, and walls the color of undercooked oatmeal. You know, the type where the waitstaff glides, not walks, and the menu reads like a poetry slam of ingredients nobody pronounces the same. I arrived 2 minutes early and still felt late. Typical. My sister, Camila, was already holding court like the opening speaker at a TED Talk. Hair slick, dress sculpted, charisma turned up just enough to seem effortless. She greeted me with a kiss that missed my cheek by about 3 inches and said, "You made it," like she was spotting a neighbor's cat on her porch. I smiled like it didn't hurt. My mom, Evelyn, gave me one of those hugs that feels like patting a damp umbrella. My dad, Gordon, nodded, just nodded, the kind you give your mechanic in the cereal aisle. I was placed at the far end of the table, naturally, next to a potted fern and across from Camila's boyfriend, who shook my hand twice and still called me Monica. My name's Molly. But I didn't say anything. I didn't correct him, didn't sigh, didn't fidget. I reminded myself, you're here for a reason. This isn't about them. This is about you doing the right thing. I had an envelope in my bag. Months of thought tucked into a single gesture. Not a check, not a bribe. Something honest, something generous. A gift. I'd planned to give it quietly, without spectacle, as proof that I was still willing to show up, even when it hurt. Dinner started with the usual low-wattage buzz of small talk. Camila talked about her speaking engagement at some leadership forum like she was updating the United Nations. My parents drank it in like gospel. I mentioned a new project I'd launched, freelance branding for indie authors, and my mom blinked and asked, "Do you get dental with that?" I smiled and stabbed at my salad. By the time the soup arrived, I'd answered 2 whole questions, neither of them about me. Then came the toast. Camila stood, wine glass lifted, all teeth and theater. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight to celebrate the 2 people who raised me to be the woman I am today. A ripple of applause. I clapped too, reflexively. She turned to our parents and added, "And I especially want to thank them for raising the most amazing only child anyone could ask for." Silence. Then clink. My mom raised her glass. My dad smiled like he was posing for a calendar. No one said a word, not a joke, not a glance my way. I could have started doing backflips on the table, and I don't think anyone would have noticed. That's when the noise in my head went quiet. Not a dramatic movie moment, more like standing in a hallway after everyone's gone home. I got up before my brain even caught up with my legs, reached into my bag, took out the envelope, and walked calmly to the center of the room. No glass clinking, no "may I have your attention," just this: I brought something tonight. Something I'd planned to give to the people who raised me. But it seems there's been a bit of a misunderstanding. Forks paused mid-air. Conversations died mid-sentence. Camila's mouth opened like a stuck zipper. My mom stiffened. My dad's jaw tightened but stayed shut. I turned away from them and walked over to the back table, where Aunt June and Uncle Terry were sitting like they'd RSVP'd to the wrong party. I handed June the envelope, leaned down, and whispered, "This is for you." Then I sat back down. That's it. The silence was biblical. My sister blinked like she was trying to reboot. My mom tilted her head like she was inspecting a hairline crack in a plate. My dad's eyes flicked to the envelope like it might detonate, but I didn't speak again, and no one dared to ask. The rest of dinner passed in that dense, uneasy quiet, like the air was too thick to breathe. But for the first time all night, I could, because I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for approval, not for permission, not to be seen. They raised an only child after all, so I gave my gift to the people who never treated me like I was optional. They say when someone shows you who they are, believe them. I used to think that was something you embroidered on a pillow or slapped on a self-help blog. But now, I think Maya Angelou knew exactly what she was talking about. My parents had been showing me who they were for years. I just refused to see it, or worse, hoped they'd change. Growing up, it was always Camila's macaroni art on the fridge, while mine got recycled as scrap paper. She sang off-key at school and got a standing ovation. I placed first in a district writing contest and got silence. I asked for a bike when I was 8. Camila got a sparkling new one with tassels and her name on the seat. I got a rusty hand-me-down from the kid 2 doors down. My dad actually said, "You should feel lucky. That one has character." So I kept trying. Cleaned the kitchen without being asked. Watched Camila's dog when she forgot. Brought home straight A's and extra credit. But every win was met with a shrug. "You're doing fine," my mom would say. "That's just expected." Camila got a B+ in US history, cake and balloons. I graduated with honors. We had takeout and an awkward high five. But I told myself I didn't need the spotlight. I was above it. I was different. What I really was? Shrinking, quietly, constantly. It wasn't until college that someone finally saw me. Aunt June and Uncle Terry weren't flashy. They didn't storm in like heroes, but they noticed. They asked questions. They listened. The first time I visited them as a kid, June let me pick the movie and the snacks. When I spilled juice on their rug and burst into tears, she just laughed and said, "It's just a rug, Molly. You're worth more than that." I think that was the first time someone made me believe it. So yeah, I brought the envelope, not to start a war, not to prove a point, but because gratitude should go where it's earned. And that night, as I watched Camila stare in disbelief and my mom grip her wine glass like it might run away, I felt it. Not revenge, just relief. I didn't sleep that night, not because I regretted it, but because my body didn't know what to do with the quiet. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't replaying old conversations, trying to rewrite them in my head. I wasn't stuck in that familiar loop of, if only I had said this, or maybe they didn't mean it that way. That part of me, the one that begged for scraps of attention, had finally shut up. And yet, the silence wasn't peace. Not really. It was just waiting. The next morning, I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed. Mom. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I put it on speaker. Her voice was tight. "Molly, we need to talk. I don't know what that was last night, but it wasn't funny. You made your point. Call me back. No, are you okay? No, let's talk this through." Just "you made your point." Like I'd put on a skit at a dinner party, and now it was time to bow out. 5 minutes later, Camila texted, "Was that real? Like the money? You actually gave them that much? They didn't even raise you. You embarrassed everyone. You humiliated Mom." I didn't respond. I was too busy laughing, the kind of laugh that comes out like a cough. Like something sour you've been choking on finally found the exit. They hadn't called me in weeks. Not even a check-in. Not a single, "Hey, how's work?" or "How have you been?" But now that I'd shifted the spotlight, suddenly I was the villain in their group chat. By noon, my dad joined the campaign. A single text. "We need to talk." Not over text. Face to face. Translation: I need time to control the story. That was the thing about my parents. They didn't just move on. They spun. They regrouped like politicians in damage control. The version of events they told themselves always made them look good, or at least misunderstood. And now, they'd been caught off script. The next wave came later that afternoon. 2 cousins I hadn't heard from since my high school graduation reached out back to back. First, "Hey, everything okay? Heard there was some drama?" Then, Mom's freaking out. "What exactly did you say to Aunt June?" Of course they were blaming her. Of course. Because heaven forbid I had thoughts or feelings on my own. No. This had to be manipulation. Which brings me to the unannounced visit. 2 days after the dinner, I opened the door to find them Mom and Dad standing on my porch. My mom in pearls, like she was headed to church. My dad, with that stiff, square stance like he was about to offer me a pamphlet on proper lawn care. "We'd like to come in," my mom said. "No," she blinked. "Molly." My dad looked past me, like he expected to see my aunt hiding behind a curtain, whispering instructions. "You don't want to talk this through?" he asked. I leaned on the doorframe. "You didn't want to talk when you toasted to your only child." "That was a joke," my mom said. No one laughed, but still it wasn't meant like that. "Wasn't it?" I asked. "You had the whole evening. You could have said something. Anything." Dad stepped in. "You blindsided us," I scoffed. That's rich coming from the people who've cut me out with a smile for years. Then came the part they really cared about. Dad asked, $50,000? That's not a joke. You were actually going to give that to us? I was. And instead, you gave it to them. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. We both knew that money had been saved for them. Not because they asked, but because part of me, some stubborn inner kid, still wanted to believe I could earn their love with enough generosity. You could have helped us retire early, my mom said. We could have paid off the house. Your father's medical bills, I know, I said softly. That's why I saved it. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. So what changed? I smiled. You raised your glasses to your only child. There it was, the shift, the moment they realized they'd lost control of the script. So this is revenge? Mom asked. No, I said. This is recognition. I gave my thanks to the people who earned it. You're throwing away your family. No, I said. I'm finally choosing mine. They left without another word, just the soft click of the door. But somehow it felt louder than any slam. I thought that might be the end of it, that they'd retreat into silence. But that's not how my family operates. They don't let things go, they recruit. The next morning, Camila posted a picture on Instagram, our parents' wedding photo, sepia-toned, with a caption that read, "Real family doesn't need applause. They show up, quietly. They stay." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Later that day, my aunt called. Her voice was shaky. "We've been getting messages," she said. "From your mom. From Camila," I figured. "She's saying we manipulated you. That you're unstable." I felt a slow, tired ache rise in my chest. "You didn't manipulate me," I said. "You never have. But now we're in the middle." "No," I told her. "You're not. You're where you've always been beside me." She didn't speak right away, just breathed into the receiver. "We're not going to cash it," she said eventually. "The money. We can't accept it." "Yes, you can. We don't need it. I know, but I need you to have it, because I can't go back and make things fair. But I can do this. I can say thank you." "You're going to make me cry." "Good," I said. I was starting to feel like I was the only one. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of wine and watched the sky turn purple. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt still. For the first time, the weight wasn't mine. There's a strange kind of calm after you set a boundary. A stillness that almost fools you into thinking you've been heard. I thought the door click meant it was over. That my parents would sulk privately, maybe reframe the narrative for a few relatives, and then eventually let it die. But that's not how people like them operate. When control slips through their fingers, they tighten their grip somewhere else. It started with a phone call I didn't expect. From Theo, my cousin. Haven't seen him in years. He's the kind of relative who forgets your birthday but sends you a friend request every other Thanksgiving. I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail. "Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. Your mom's saying stuff. About the money. About you. Might want to check your socials." I don't use Facebook anymore. Barely touched it in years. But curiosity has its claws. I logged in, and there it was. A long, winding post from my mother, pasted over a sunset photo like something from a grief support group. It was vague enough to keep her innocent, but sharp enough to cut. Sometimes the people we love get led astray, and sometimes those who pretend to love them take advantage when they're most vulnerable. Family is loyalty, not money. We did our best. Now we are being punished for it. I stared at the screen, heart pounding in that sick, hollow rhythm. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. The crowd in the comments already knew who the villain was. "Praying for you, Evelyn. You don't deserve this. She'll come around one day. They always do." She forgot who held her when she was helpless. The kind of back-patting parade only social media can throw. I didn't even know half the people chiming in. I almost laughed. Almost. But then my hands started shaking, and then came the real blow. My aunt called later that night. I could tell immediately her voice was off. Like she was trying to be normal, but didn't quite have the strength. "We got an email," she said, quietly. No subject. No sender name, just screenshots. Screenshots. Of texts I'd sent years ago. Random messages. From college. From late nights when I was venting. Harmless on their own, but strung together. They painted me like a brat. I'd said stuff like, "Sometimes I wish they'd back off. And I love them, but they hover. Or I need space without guilt." Nothing cruel. Just honesty in motion. Frustrated, tired honesty. sent in trust. And someone Camila had dug through them, stitched them together, and sent them to my aunt. Like proof, like betrayal. I know you didn't mean them, my aunt said softly, but it hurt. A little. That was the worst part. She wasn't accusing me. She wasn't angry. She was just wounded. Because unlike the others, she actually believed my words mattered. I grabbed my keys without thinking and drove straight to their house. Stopped at the bakery on the way. Brought a box of croissants. Because I didn't know how to apologize with words yet. She met me at the door. No lecture. No tension. Just a quiet, "Come in." I sat at their kitchen table, the same one that had once felt more like home than my childhood house ever did. The same table where she taught me how to make coffee without it tasting like sadness. "I'm sorry," I said, "for every word that made you doubt how much you mean to me. For anything that landed the wrong way." She didn't rush to respond, just reached across and held my hand. And that was it. No performance, no drama, just love in its simplest form presence. My uncle poured coffee. Burnt it, as always. We still drank it. That night, I realized something hard. I had been fighting to fix the wrong things for years, trying to earn love from people who only offered it as a transaction, trying to please the ones who saw my worth as a reflection of their image. It wasn't just toxic, it was exhausting. So I stopped. Stopped explaining myself to people who refused to hear me. Stopped offering vulnerability where it was weaponized. Stopped calling it family just because we shared DNA. I needed distance. And I needed them to feel it. So I wrote a letter, not angry, not cruel, just honest. Please don't contact me again. Don't try through other relatives. Don't spin your version of events. I wish you peace, but I am done playing a part in a story that's never been mine. I printed it, mailed it, certified so they couldn't say they never saw it. A week later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Mom. She sounded calm at first, but by the end, her voice cracked in that way that never meant pain, only pride losing its footing. "You've ruined this family," she said. "You've broken your father's heart. I hope you're proud of yourself." And here's the thing. I was. Because for the first time, I hadn't broken myself to make them comfortable, but they didn't stop there. Of course not. They started calling my aunt and uncle directly, sent them emails, even drafted a formal letter, suggested they were being used, manipulated, claimed I was having a mental breakdown, said the money wasn't a gift, it was a cry for help. They didn't even want the money anymore. They just wanted the power to rewrite the story. My uncle ended up going to a lawyer just to make sure they were protected. I offered to pay for it. He refused. "We don't take from family," he said, "but we'll accept gifts." That winter, I spent Christmas with them, just the three of us. No forced smiles. No guilt-tripped attendance. No matching sweaters bought in bulk. We made soup, played cards, watched old holiday movies that didn't take themselves too seriously. My aunt knitted me a scarf. My uncle burned the hot chocolate again. We drank it anyway. It was the best Christmas I've ever had. At one point, my aunt looked over at me and asked, "Do you regret it?" I didn't even have to think. "No," I said, because I didn't just walk away from a family. I walked toward one. That night, sitting on the couch under a too warm blanket, I realized something else. The silence I used to fear wasn't so scary anymore, because now it was filled with love, real love. The kind that doesn't ask you to shrink just to fit in the frame. You'd think the story would have ended there. A line drawn, a boundary made, a chapter closed. But I underestimated just how far people will go when they're not in control of the story anymore. For a few quiet weeks, things seemed still. No calls, no texts, no flying monkeys flapping in from the extended family tree. I'd begun to exhale, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd accepted it, that they'd sit with the discomfort instead of trying to rearrange it. But people like them don't sit still. They rewrite, they reframe, and they don't like being cast as background characters in someone else's version of the truth. It started subtly. A friend from high school, someone I hadn't talked to in years, messaged me on Instagram. "Hey, saw your mom's post. Hope you're okay." Kind of vague, but yikes, vague. That was always her weapon of choice. I checked, and sure enough, there it was. Another public post. This time, A photo of the family house in golden hour, lighting with a Bible quote underneath, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." And then the caption, "Some wounds are too deep to explain. All we can do is pray and forgive, even when those we raised choose distance and bitterness." She knew what she was doing. She always did. No direct accusations. Just enough breadcrumbs for people to arrive at the conclusion she wanted. The comments poured in. "Stay strong, Evelyn. You've always been such a good mother. God sees your heart. She'll regret it one day." She wasn't grieving the loss of me. She was grieving the loss of her audience. And she was working overtime to get them back. But then it escalated. Of course it did. Camila started reaching out to people in my orbit. Mutuals, old teachers, even one of my exes. Telling them I'd changed, that I was influenced, that I was manipulated into giving away family money. She painted herself as the concerned sister trying to bring me back from the edge. Funny how no one's concerned when you're drowning quietly, but suddenly they're lifeguards when you swim away. Then came the email, sent directly to my aunt. From a burner address, no name, no greeting, just attachments. More screenshots. This time, photos of me old ones, from years ago. Drunk selfies from college, rants I'd made in private messages, even a tweet I posted during a breakup that said, "Sometimes I wish I could trade my entire family for a burrito and call it a good deal." Childish stuff, contextless, but weaponized perfectly. The subject line, "Just so you know who you're defending." It didn't take a genius to know who sent it. My aunt called me right after. She didn't sound angry, just sad. "I know this isn't who you are," she said, "but I won't lie. It stings." I nodded even though she couldn't see me. "I know. Why would she do this?" "Because I stopped apologizing," I said, "and that scares them. Because for people like my mother, love is only acceptable when it fits into the script. Once you step off the stage, they label you ungrateful, dramatic, broken. Anything to make your absence feel like a flaw in you, not in them." And I was done playing the lead in their fantasy. That weekend, I wrote a second letter, not to them, to myself. A vow. I will not explain myself to those who refuse to listen. I will not shrink to fit their comfort. I will not carry shame that was never mine. And I will not apologize for finally protecting my peace. It didn't erase the hurt, but it anchored me, gave me something solid to hold when the noise got loud. Then the knock came, 3 days later. Late afternoon, I was still in my sweatpants, hair unwashed, mid-scroll through a recipe I was never actually going to make. I opened the door and there she was, Camila, in full campaign mode, glossed lips, apologetic eyes. Holding a Tupperware container like that made her a peacekeeper instead of a saboteur. "I brought lasagna," she said, too casually. "Figured you might be tired of takeout." I didn't move. "How'd you get my address?" She smiled like we were in on the same joke. "Come on, Molly, you think I can't find you? We're sisters." I didn't invite her in, just leaned on the frame, one hand still holding my phone. She took a breath, trying to shift into charm. "Look, I know things got a little intense, but you've made your point, okay? You won." Mom's devastated. "Dad won't even talk about it. You got what you wanted." I raised an eyebrow. "What exactly do you think I wanted?" She blinked. "Attention? Payback? I don't know, recognition? You really think I torched every bridge I had just to prove a point?" Her voice sharpened. "You gave them $50,000, Molly. For babysitting? For sending you soup? Come on." That wasn't about gratitude. That was punishment. I stared at her. "It was repayment," I said, "for the years they showed up. For every time they saw me when you all looked through me. You don't get to rewrite that." She stepped closer. "They didn't raise you." "They did," I said. "Maybe not legally, but they were there when it mattered most. You embarrassed us." I didn't flinch. "Then maybe don't build a family image that collapses the second someone tells the truth." She looked away, jaw clenched. The Tupperware container trembled in her hand. Finally, she muttered, "You'll regret this. One day." I gave her a sad smile. "Maybe. But it won't be today." And I closed the door, gently. Not out of spite, but because I didn't need to slam it to make it count. Afterward, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of water and listened to the quiet. This wasn't the kind of silence that felt empty. It was the kind that made room. Room for breathing, for healing, for truth. They could keep spinning their stories. Let them twist themselves into knots trying to stay the victims. Let them write Facebook posts drenched in scripture and sad emojis. Let them cook lasagna if it helps them feel like martyrs. But I wasn't eating it. I wasn't digesting guilt anymore. And I wasn't letting them feed me versions of the past that made their neglect palatable. They were storytellers, sure. But now, so was I. After the door closed behind Camila, I sat still for a long time. Not out of shock. Not even sadness. Just clarity. The kind that feels like standing in a room after a storm has passed. Everything still damp. Nothing ruined. Just changed. I knew then there'd be no apology, no confession, no sudden revelation where my parents would fall to their knees and say, "We were wrong, we're sorry, we see you now." They were too far down their own storyline, too invested in the version where they were saints, and I was the storm that came to tear down their temple. I'd let go of needing closure from them. But closure has a funny way of sneaking up on you. Sometimes it doesn't come from the ones who broke you. Sometimes it slips in from the side, from someone you thought was safe. It happened a week after Camila's visit. My aunt texted me late at night. Just a single message. "Call me when you can. It's important." My stomach dropped. That pit you get when you don't know what's wrong yet, but your body does. I called. She picked up immediately. "Molly," she said, "I need to tell you something." Her voice was different, tired, fragile in a way I'd never heard before. "What's going on?" She hesitated. "We got another email." I felt my grip tighten on the phone, but it wasn't from them this time. It was anonymous, but not really. "What do you mean?" She paused. It had pictures. From our house. From inside. My blood ran cold. "From inside your house?" She nodded like I could see her. "Photos of you. From last Christmas. Sitting on the porch. Cooking in the kitchen. You and me playing cards. Nothing creepy. But intimate. Private. The kind of photos you don't even realize are being taken. The kind someone captures when they're close enough to be invisible." I didn't speak. I couldn't. There was a message too, she added. It said, "You think you know who you're protecting, but she'll turn on you like she did us. Don't let her ruin you too." The words didn't hit like bullets. They seeped in slow, like oil in water. "Who sent it?" I asked, though I already knew. My aunt's voice cracked. "Your uncle checked the metadata. The photos were taken from an old phone. One we used to let Camila borrow when she visited." I didn't move. Didn't breathe. She must have set it to auto-upload, left it plugged in. It's the only explanation. I laughed, but it came out hollow. She planted a camera? Technically, she left one. But, yes, my mind rewound. Back to Christmas. The warmth, the laughter, the peace. Camila had visited once briefly. She'd dropped off a gift basket and left without staying. I hadn't even thought twice. But she had. She'd been building her narrative, watching, documenting, waiting for a way to flip the script. My aunt continued, "We confronted her. She denied it at first, then said we were being paranoid. That maybe we left the photos out on social media and forgot." "We didn't," I said. "You're not the type." She sighed. "We blocked her, reported the email, but I wanted you to know." There was a long pause. Not angry, not dramatic, just heavy. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "You let me in, and this came to your door." "No," she replied. "This came to your door. We just stood in the way." That's when I cried. Not from betrayal, from love, from the way they chose me again, from the way they didn't flinch. After the call, I sat on my porch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. The stars were out, sharp and clear. That's the thing about cold air, it hurts, but it shows you everything. I thought about what Camila had done. Not just the spying, the effort, the calculation, the time it took to plan, plant, retrieve, email, all of that just to make me look like the villain in someone else's home. That's how badly they needed to believe I didn't belong there. Because if I did, if I really was loved and wanted and chosen, then it made their indifference look ugly. It made their silence unforgivable. So instead of owning it, they created a story where I was dangerous. Too much. Too dramatic. Too ungrateful. And that made me powerful. Because if you weren't worth listening to, no one would work that hard to silence you. The next day, I deleted every photo of them from my life. Not out of anger, but because I was done archiving people who never showed up. I didn't want reminders anymore. Didn't want to scroll back and see birthday dinners where I smiled too hard. Didn't want to see Camila in old group shots with her perfect teeth and practiced charm. Didn't want proof of a version of me that kept begging to be picked. Instead, I made new folders. One for June and Terry. One for the dog we adopted together from the local shelter. One labeled Real Life. That weekend, I took my aunt to a pottery class. Neither of us had ever touched a wheel before. We made lopsided bowls and laughed so hard we got scolded for disrupting the room. After class, she looked at me with clay on her nose and said, "This feels like the kind of memory no one can take away." And she was right, because love built without conditions doesn't need defending. It just is. They tried to ruin that, to poison it, to make it seem like a fluke, a trick, a phase, but they failed. Because when someone truly sees you, they can't be convinced otherwise by someone who only ever looked at you sideways. Sometimes, closure doesn't arrive like a clean ending. Sometimes it's not a slam or a scream. It's a slow breath, a night sky, a quiet in your chest that no longer hurts. It had been weeks since the photos, since the last manipulation, since Camila had tried to reframe my life into something unrecognizable. I hadn't heard from her, not directly. But silence from people like her isn't absence, it's calculation. They wait until the audience forgets what really happened. Then they come back with a softer mask. But I didn't wait. I moved forward. My aunt and uncle helped me repaint my apartment one weekend. We picked the color together: sage green, calm, grounded, nothing fancy, just honest. I donated the last box of family memorabilia after we finished. Old birthday cards, school certificates with my sister's scribbled compliments. All of it gone. Not out of spite, out of necessity. You don't need to archive people who never saw you. You don't need to carry their ghosts to prove you survived them. What surprised me most was how light it felt. Not sad, not hollow, just clean. Like I had finally swept out a room I'd been avoiding for years. But of course, even dust settles in patterns that try to return. One night, my mom called. From a new number. I didn't answer, but I listened to the voicemail because part of me still wanted to know what angle she'd take next. Her voice cracked at the beginning. "Molly," she said, like the name itself had weight. Then came the old rhythm. "We tried our best. You're making us look like monsters. Your father is heartbroken. Your sister's humiliated. This isn't how families handle things. You've changed. I don't even recognize you anymore." And then the knife. "But maybe that's what you wanted all along, attention." She ended with something bitter, muttered under her breath before she hung up. I didn't replay it. I didn't save it. I just sat there, letting the words dissolve into the night air. It didn't sting the way it once would have, because she was right about one thing. I had changed, but not for attention, for freedom, for peace, for the version of me that didn't need to shrink to be safe. I didn't respond. Didn't send a rebuttal or a carefully worded essay breaking down every inconsistency. I didn't ask her to understand. That's the thing about healing, it's not a debate. You don't win by convincing the person who hurt you. You win by no longer needing them to admit it. I'd already found what I needed. In Terry's half-burnt toast and June's bad dancing. In the quiet car rides, the check-in texts. The way they always let me finish my sentences without rushing to fix them. Love without strings feels unnatural at first. Like you're waiting for the catch, the claws, the butt. But it never came. That winter, I helped them shovel snow from the front walk. It wasn't a big thing, just a moment. But I caught my uncle watching me with that soft look in his eyes. The kind that says more than words ever do. He didn't say thank you, he didn't need to. He just handed me a thermos of too hot cocoa and said, "I hope you know we're proud of you." And I believed him. Not because I'd earned it, but because he meant it. That was new for me. One night, a few months later, I sat down and wrote everything out, not for them, for myself. I wrote about the macaroni art that never made the fridge, about the birthday dinners that never happened, about the silence that always followed my wins, about the moment I realized I wasn't forgotten, I was ignored. I wrote about handing the envelope to the only people who ever made me feel seen. And then I wrote this sentence, bold, underlined. I stopped apologizing the moment I realized I was never the problem. That sentence stayed with me. It anchored me when I found myself drifting toward old guilt. It reminded me that healing isn't about being right, it's about being real. My parents didn't respond to the letter I mailed months ago, not with words, but they responded in actions, trying to guilt my aunt and uncle, trying to discredit me to extended family, trying to reclaim the version of me they could control, but I didn't flinch. They sent legal-sounding letters, vague threats about manipulation and mental instability. They tried to claw the money back, not because they wanted it, but because they couldn't stand someone else being chosen. My uncle met with a lawyer. I offered to pay. He refused. Again. "We don't take from family," he said, "but we'll protect it." They cashed the check a month later, not because they needed it, but because I asked them to. Because love is letting people show up for you too. That spring, we went to the farmer's market. They bought me a bouquet of sunflowers and a used book about sea glass. "Because you like messy, beautiful things," my aunt said with a wink. That night we made dinner together. Nothing fancy. Just pasta, garlic bread, a salad with too many olives. After we ate, I stood on their porch and looked at the stars again. I remembered that night at the restaurant. The toast, the envelope, the stunned silence. For a long time, I'd questioned that moment. Was it petty? Too public? Too sharp? Could I have handled it with more grace? Maybe. But then again, grace is often mistaken for silence. For swallowing your truth so someone else doesn't choke on it. And I was done doing that. I didn't make a scene. I made a statement, one that echoed louder than applause. So now, when I look back, I don't flinch. I don't second guess. I don't wonder if I was wrong for finally putting myself first, because I didn't just walk away from something broken. I walked toward something whole, and that's worth everything. Story 2. I discovered a $12,000 charge on my card following the group excursion. According to my sister, it was for the entire family. Don't spoil the mood. Then you'll love what's coming, I added with a smile. The flooring began to tremble at that point. To be honest, I wasn't astonished, although I wish I could say that. I mean, I was astonished but also irritated almost poetically. No, that would have needed some kind of faith that my family wouldn't come up with a clever technique to deceive me and gaslight me into thinking it was a collective hug this one time. The Monday following our return, the charge appeared, sitting at my apartment, still wearing the hoodie I had on throughout the flight. I was attempting to recall if my luggage had somehow found its way into the hallway or was still in the car. My bank app had risen to the top of my list of alerts, but it hadn't. I foolishly agreed to pay $12.8742 from a group charge on a shared card for the Airbnb. I'm referring to the standard beachside rental when I say Airbnb. I had consented to assist with booking. It turns out that the opulent Villa Tessa unintentionally elevated us to a private chef the day before the trip. She and Mark, I suppose, received couples massages, and the timing was ideal for a 45-minute boat excursion. In case my banking software had chosen to try psychological warfare, I blinked at the number 5 times before reloading the page. The money was gone if it hadn't. Every line item in my account showed the trauma, even though it appeared to be attempting to behave normal after having recently survived a theft. "Hey, I just noticed a $12,000 charge on the card," I texted Tessa. "Was it intended to be divided?" 3 minutes later, she answered, "Tessa, it was for everyone in the family. Don't spoil the mood, correct? The atmosphere. Please don't let me destroy its precious energy. While Eli bears the expense, let's all act as though nothing is wrong." I spent a lot of time staring at my laptop because I understood precisely what I wanted to say, not because I was at a loss for words. It was either going to be the most comma-filled text I've ever composed, or the sort of communication that was screenshotted and shared with the caption in family group chats. "He's acting strangely once more, so I choose to be peaceful. Then you'll enjoy what's about to happen." She didn't answer. I think she thought I was being ironic. I generally am, to be fair, but not this time. After shutting off the app, I opened the spreadsheet and sipped my cold coffee slowly. Even before I penned the first sentence, I had a name in mind: costs. Tessa refuses to repay. I added 5 additional columns by the time I completed the first tab. I intended to terminate the entire playlist, not simply destroy the atmosphere. I'd like to share a brief and incredibly gloomy montage of instances from my financial life over the past 10 years, in case you feel that I'm exaggerating or that perhaps this was an isolated incident. Tessa, a 23-year-old, borrows $500 to pay for a goldfish emergency vet cost. She neglected to feed it throughout the emergency. The $500 was never given back. She is 26 years old and uses my car for 2 hours. Returns 3 days later with a new boyfriend and a broken bumper. I co-sign a lease for her at the age of 29 since she is unable to pay the deposit. She is evicted for hosting an engagement party in a single bedroom with a live DJ and a smoke machine. Therefore, this wasn't novel. Simply put, it was larger, more spectacular, and, to be honest, more costly than normal. The group chat remained active for precisely 3 days following the trip. Tessa posted images of cocktails and sunsets, along with the hashtags best trip ever and family vibes. Everyone replied with fire gifts and loving emoticons. Nobody brought up the money. I didn't say anything since I didn't care. I had learned something significant over the years, yet I still cared a great deal. Reacting too quickly makes you the issue. You become the tail if you wait long enough. Tessa gave me a call on Thursday. She chirped as though she hadn't just digitally mugged me 4 days prior, big bro. Hello. Flatly, I replied. Let's talk about the card. It may seem like a lot, but everything was in harmony, right? Have you gotten the points? Yes, indeed. The points for frequent flyers. 900 of them. Enough to purchase half of an airport drink. I responded, you charge 12 grand. She let out a deep sigh as if I were the one being challenging. It was advantageous to all of us. Avoid being strange. You're doing all right. One of your jobs is incredibly steady, or something. I shut my eyes. Over the phone, I could almost hear her fluttering her hair. It's where I work, I said. As a person no. She chuckled. You're quite theatrical. In any case, I have to run. For Labor Day, we are considering locations in Tahoe. Speak soon. Before I could respond, she hung up the phone. After that call, I spent a good 10 minutes staring at my wall. I'm thinking whether it would be less expensive to let my fridge consume me and then handle another family vacation as I listened to its subtle buzz. Next, I accessed the receipts folder on my desktop. It was there, but I hadn't looked at it in a long time. Canceled checks, images from Venmo, and years' worth of correspondence. I wasn't being petty by keeping them. I knew in my heart that this day would arrive, therefore I was preserving them. Every bill I ever had been paid. Whenever someone said, "Can you spot me for the moment?" and then disappeared with my money like a magician, I looked up attorneys that focused on fraud and small claims on Google that evening. And by Friday, I had a meeting scheduled with Mr. Halpern, who seemed just like the kind of guy who wouldn't bat an eyelid if he were dubbed a buzzkill at Saturday afternoon brunch. I took a car to my parents' place for what was now referred to as a relaxed family gathering. Interpretation. Tesla needs a friendly, receptive audience to make an announcement. After pulling the folder out of my backpack and taking a big breath, I parked down the street. A copy of each charge and receipt was included, along with a message from Mr. Halpern, who had kindly volunteered to visit in person, much to my joy. Tesla, dressed in a flowing white dress and sporting the air of someone who had just been informed she was the moment, answered the door when I knocked once. Eli. She shrieked and gave me a hug as if I hadn't been secretly preparing a lawsuit for a week. Enter. We have only just begun. Like a guy who still believed that things would work out for him, she ushered me into the living room, where Mark was carrying a tray of mimosas. With a courteous grin, I set my suitcase down beside the coat rack and took a seat on the couch's edge. Tessa lifted her mug. We're all so glad to be here. This is the essence of family, really. I gave one nod. You'll adore what's coming after that. The flooring began to tremble at that point. The flooring had begun to tremble. Unfortunately, not from some ethereal power or explosive karmic justice. Only one person, a hefty person, ascending the stairs. The house shook with the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps, as if it sensed that something terrible was about to happen. Tessa appeared to be unaware. She was too preoccupied with lifting her glass and enjoying the occasion as if she had just won the Sunday brunch crown. I waited with my head tilted slightly toward the door. I only needed to do that. Simply wait. However, we haven't arrived yet. Let's take a moment to go back in time because individuals like Tessa don't turn into monsters overnight. It's a long game, a gradual, tiresome eroding of boundaries that is just enough and charming. However, we're family guilt to prevent you from making a big deal out of nothing. Do you recognize those powerful memes of older siblings? The ones where the world is held together by a photoshopped person while everyone else sleeps soundly? I was that person. However, nobody created a meme. While everyone else forgot their wallets for the 5th consecutive meal, I simply grinned through gritted teeth and discreetly paid bills. I didn't know. At the age of 19, it began modestly. Since she was having trouble navigating the checkout page, Tessa asked me to purchase her concert tickets and assured me that she would Venmo me right away. She posted a picture with the caption front row, but she never did. Made this a reality. By the age of 21, she had persuaded our parents that her trip to Cancun during spring break was a cultural and educational experience. I must have lent her the spending money somehow, since you now have that job, correct? That position. I was eating instant ramen 5 nights a week while working at a phone store. And it got worse every year. She had asked me to co-sign her auto loan by the time she was 25, when I was hesitant. Mom drew me aside and introduced me to Eli, your sister. Families support one another, which in our family actually meant that she spends money on your help. Tessa didn't thank me. She took a selfie with the keys, tagged it #selfmade, and left me on read. You might be wondering, where were the parents in all of this? Let me paint a quick picture. My dad is the human equivalent of background noise. He spends most of his days scrolling through sports forums and emerging only to say things like, "Don't start drama," or "this again." My mom, on the other hand, is a master of the guilt smile. You know, the one that says, "I'm not mad, just disappointed. But also, I expect you to pay for this." She doesn't yell. She just sighs a lot and then says things like, "Tessa has a lot on her plate right now. You don't understand what it's like to be the youngest. You're doing well. Why can't you just be generous?" What they meant was you're responsible, therefore you owe us everything. So when the group trip came up, I already knew how it would go. Tessa messaged me 2 months before. "Tessa, family trip idea. Airbnb by the coast. Everyone splits it up in what I should have said. Only if we all prepay and sign a blood oath." What I actually said. Sure, because I'm a coward. Or was. I assumed splitting meant what normal people mean. Divide costs evenly and pay before the trip. But Tessa had a different vision. Turns out she upgraded the Airbnb without telling anyone. Booked a chef. Booked a private cruise. Added extras that made no sense for a family trip, like monogrammed robes and a personal beach mixologist. I still don't know what that means. And she put it all on my card because I was already on the booking. And when I found out, it was for the whole family. Don't spoil the mood, of course. Back in the present, I was still sitting on that couch, trying not to choke on the scent of overpriced candle wax and Tessa's delusion. The footsteps were louder now. Mark looked toward the door, frowning slightly. He didn't know what was happening, but he could smell a shift in the air. I could tell that was fine. I wasn't in a rush. I pulled the folder from my bag and held it in my lap. Thick stack of papers, neatly tabbed receipts, screenshots, a notarized letter from Mr. Halpern, and a breakdown of every expense tied to my card since 2017. I had charts. Tesla was still talking. She'd moved on to a story about how someone literally begged her to become an influencer. "I mean, it's exhausting being this magnetic," she said, flipping her hair like she was being filmed. Mark chuckled and offered me a mimosa. I declined. I need my brain fully online for what was coming. That's when Mom shuffled in from the kitchen, holding a plate of avocado toast like it was a peace offering. "You're quiet, sweetheart," she said gently. "Everything okay?" I looked at her. Really looked. There was no awareness, no recognition that anything had gone wrong. No apology? No. "I heard about the charge. Let's talk." Just vibes and brunch and silence. "I'm fine," I said. "Just waiting." "For what?" she inquired. I didn't get to answer because the door cracked open and someone walked inside. He was tall, mid-60s, gray hair, properly dressed, a black leather handbag over one shoulder. Tessa blinked. "Hi, can we assist you?" He adjusted his spectacles. Calm professional. The type of serenity that implies he doesn't need to raise his voice to ruin you. "I'm searching for Tessa Morgan," he said. She grinned immediately. "That's me." He unzipped his knapsack, drew out a single envelope, and handed it to her. "You've been served," he said. The room froze, as if the Bluetooth speaker's battery had just been abruptly removed in the middle of a song. Tessa remained still. Bewildered, Mark leaned forward. With her toast still in hand, Mom stood at the doorway. "Muttered," said Dad from the hallway. "Why all this?" I smoothed my jacket and carefully got to my feet. Just the facts, no drama, no shouting. This was not the end, however. Not even close. Because no one had noticed the envelope in Tessa's hand, which she hadn't yet recognized. For a person who never stopped talking, that was only the beginning. It was amazing how quiet Tessa became. She gazed at the envelope as if it were about to bite. She did not move her fingers. Her expression remained the same. I had never seen her so silent. It was as if the area of her brain that often produced hashtags and spin deflection had suddenly stopped working. She didn't answer as Mark leaned down to say something to her. Like he may open it himself, he grabbed for the envelope. She gave it a start. "Excellent. Ever the professional, Mr. Halpern nodded courteously and turned to face me. "You have my number if you need anything else." "I do," I said. "Thank you." Calm and unconcerned, he walked out the same way he had in, as though he had 6 more brunches to spoil before noon. To put it mildly, the awkward hush that ensued seemed like someone had accidentally struck pause on a comedy. Tessa stood transfixed, holding a legal envelope, while the rest of the family appeared to have entered a play without a script, but no one else was laughing. "What is this?" At last, Mom questioned in a harsh, quiet voice. Tessa remained silent. Mark faced me. "Man, what the devil?" I cocked my head. "Do you hope I'm confused, or are you not?" Mark blinked. "You attended brunch with a lawyer? He wasn't brought by me?" "He brought the law," I said. "There is a distinction." At last, Tessa found her voice. "Seldom. This is absurd," she yelled. "Is your sister being sued by you?" I gave a shrug, not bringing a lawsuit. "Since all alternative approaches appear to be incompatible with your lifestyle, you are only seeking payback publicly and legally. I promise to reimburse you," she yelled. "Really?" When I took my phone out. "Because none of the 30 texts we've exchanged in the previous 30 days contain an apology, a payment, or even a Venmo request. Unless I missed the clause that says that maintaining the atmosphere is equivalent to paying back money." From behind his newspaper, Dad spoke as if he had just realized he had a kid named Eli. "Hurry up. It's family." I claimed that line has been used to justify anything from identity theft to unpaid rent. Therefore, perhaps you should skip this one unless you intend to express anything unique. He opened his lips, then shut it again. "Let's go back to the sports section." With her hands on the table like a disgruntled guidance counselor, Mom took a step forward. "You have the option to speak with us first." "For years," I said. "I did. Recently, I meant." "You mean following the unlawful charge of $12,000? I said. "Following 5 years of being treated like a Wi-Fi, enabled, limitless debit card." She pursed her lips. No return. When the facts made her appear horrible, she wore that tight, courteous wrath. "This is unbelievable," Tessa mumbled. "This is a real thing. Know what's crazy?" I said. "I can't either." She raised her head. She was shocked that someone was not giving up, which is why her eyes were shiny now rather than sad. "You're exaggerating this situation." I handed the second spreadsheet copy across the table and replied, "No. At last, I'm giving this the weight it merits." She left it alone. Mark did. Slowly, he turned the pages, each one labeled with a date, color-coded meal expenses, car rentals, deposits, Airbnb, and each dollar was associated with a date, a message, or a screenshot. "This is specific," he remarked softly. "It's where I work." I said, "I can definitely find a missing $12,000 if I can recover files from a corrupted drive." Tessa mumbled, "I didn't realize it would be that much." "Then perhaps don't use someone else's card to represent the whole Santa Barbara resort economy." Mark cleared his throat and set down the spreadsheet. Well, see, we may have gone too far. I said. He hesitated. All right, he said. Tessa overreacted. But isn't it possible for us to resolve this amicably outside of court? Slowly, I nodded. Yes. Repay me in full, plus interest and legal fees, he blinked. Are you serious? Like a heart attack, that is. Hurry up. That isn't rational. I got to my feet. Using my credit card to pay for a $2,000 bidet wasn't either. Since you desired matching robes for a picture of the sunset, Tessa sounded. Half outrage, half gasp. This is embarrassing, she gave a hiss. That's right, I responded. That's what occurs when someone chooses to play the hero in public after being the villain in private. You've hated me forever, she remarked abruptly. That's the main point of this. I chuckled. I was unable to resist. No, Tessa. I've always felt sorry for you. There is a distinction. With two clenched fists, she rose to her feet. Do you believe that you are superior to me? No, I said. I believe I'm done allowing you to make me feel worse. I turned to leave after saying that. Mom called out to Eli, Don't do this, please. I turned around. I did it already. I didn't feel bad for the first time in years as the door clicked shut behind me. Not the type of guilt that lingers in your throat after every family get-together, but the courteous kind. Not the silent pain in your chest when someone tells you that you've always been the one with the strength. The half did not whisper. Are you able to assist? This one time only becomes a habit. Not guilty. Only air. I ignored the humming in my pocket and silently made my way to my car. Texts, of course. Apologies in the form of charges. Perplexed. Anger. Perhaps even a few gentle voicemails that began, I can't believe you do this to us, and concluded, I didn't look. I drove instead. No specific destination in mind. Just motion. Only distance. The buzzing on my phone continued. However, I allowed it. Like I had done all my life, I let the noises to fade into the background. I finally stopped at a little park. Empty. Keep quiet. I just sat there under a tree. Inhale, then exhale. Tessa was probably pacing and shouting somewhere. Mark was looking up legal terminology on Google. My parents pretended not to have anticipated this, despite the fact that they most definitely had. And I felt at ease. I wasn't finished, though. Not quite yet. 3 weeks. It was that long before the quiet began to give way to sound. Initially, nothing was present. Just the repercussions that was to be expected. Blocked phone numbers. Group talks with frozen grins. Messages from a family group quietly passing away. My name was not mentioned. However, it lingered there like a coffee stain. Nobody was interested in cleaning. The damage control process then started. In a follow-up email to the family, Tessa explained that everything had been misunderstood. She claimed that by bringing in a lawyer, I had blown things out of proportion, and that I had volunteered to pay but then changed my mind. She only mentioned the narrative she could use to paint herself as a victim, not the $12 charge or the years of unrecognized support. Tessa, classic. Mark took another path. He offered my lawyer a third of the money in exchange for my dropping everything in an email. We said no. To his credit, Mr. Halpern handled it with a dignity I will never be able to achieve. We're not interested in partial accountability, he said plainly. Tessa shared a blurry close-up selfie on Instagram stories a few days later. Puffy eyes. Caption: Once you stop providing, some individuals will turn on you. 3 passive-aggressive Bible texts and a depressing soundtrack are played. I didn't answer. What might I have said? In actuality, by imposing a barrier, I betrayed you. I apologize for not sending the emotional labor tax via Venmo. For being the entertaining one, do you think I owe you anything? No, their PR game was over for me. Rather, the first concentrated on my life, which seemed like it truly belonged to me for the first time in years. At work, one received a raise. I'm apparently coming. Not depleted emotionally by family strife. Improves your performance at work. Who could have known? My quality of sleep improved. Between passive-aggressive phone calls, 8 dinners were not delivered in a panic. I relocated to a new apartment where there are no shared walls and no chance of unexpected guests. I updated my emergency contacts, put Aunt Claire at the top of the list, and changed my phone number. After everything transpired, she was the only one who had been in touch. She sent a brief, straightforward card that was handwritten. You made the correct decision. Claire, I wish I had done it years ago. When I read it, I cried not because it was depressing, but because it was the first time a family member understood the price I had paid for finally saying no. I received a letter in the mail 2 months after the brunch event. I can identify the handwriting, but there is no return address. There was a $1,000 check and an asterisk on the note. She left me after accusing me of not being faithful enough to her during the entire ordeal. I ought to have intervened sooner. It's a start, but I know this won't solve the problem. Mark, asterisk. I didn't rip it up, but I also didn't respond. I have never received money back before. A courtroom was not necessary for the civil litigation. When we wouldn't settle, her lawyer gave up. Now she's repaying it. Every single dime. She had no other option, not because she wanted to. Tessa's account had been marked for questionable conduct, as far as I knew. Not for me. It's just karma at work. She claimed defamation after someone sent them images of the court case, costing her a marketing contract with a travel firm. Quietly, the agency severed relations. The family is still having whispers. I am blamed by some. She is blamed by some. Some act as though it never occurred. It's okay. Allow them to writhe in the quiet, because I'm not stuck in it for the first time in my life. I was reading, drinking coffee, and taking care of myself in a little neighborhood cafe a few weeks ago when a friend from high school entered. They knew who I was. We caught up over a minute of conversation. Hey, I heard what happened with your sister, they added, lowering their voice. That's crazy. I was prepared for criticism, yet all they did was nod and contribute. Well done. Most individuals never leave. I was at a loss for words, simply grinned. However, it stayed with me. What does no one tell you? At first, peace feels strange. You anticipate a fireworks-like sensation, a victory parade or large celebration where everyone is chanting your name. However, it isn't. It's silent. It's asking for assistance while having supper without sending a single SMS. When the telephone buzzes, it doesn't flinch. It's navigating past your phone's bank app without becoming anxious. It's silence and the knowledge that it's not meaningless. It's space. Make space for your own thoughts, voice, and life. And that's more valuable than whatever they've ever taken. I still occasionally consider it. Tessa's expression when someone finally told her no and provided documentation to support it, the envelope, and that particular moment. There is a part of me that wishes things hadn't gone that far. I wish someone else had intervened sooner, that perhaps, just possibly, my parents would have objected to this. Can't we simply move on instead? A part of me, however, is aware that I never would have done it if I hadn't. I would still be paying for hers if I hadn't caused a scene. I still occasionally question whether I went too far. Was there anything else I could have said? Another opportunity to describe the pain. I was once again quietly disappointed that no one paid attention. Or perhaps, just possibly, this was the only way they would ever pay attention. What are your thoughts? Have I gone too far? Or was I just establishing a line they couldn't cross at last? Tell me in the comments below. I'd want to know what you would have done. And if you read this narrative through to the conclusion. For more, remember to subscribe, similar to this, because closing the door permanently is often the only way to cease becoming the family's doormat. Story 3. My brother revealed that he had been accepted to Stanford during my baby shower. Then, as I was cleaning the icing off the floor, they changed it into his party. I didn't protest, but my mother yelled the following morning when she discovered something on the kitchen table. Your baby shower should be a celebration, so the saying goes. A gentle, affectionate day with pastel decor, courteous giggles, and people swooning over small socks. When I spent the previous 2 weeks organizing things, that's what I had in mind. Just something cozy and personal, nothing fancy. The food was my own expense. In addition to choosing the decorations and ordering the cake, I also cleaned the living room to get rid of the stench of my dad's smokes and old takeout. I created a playlist of peaceful acoustic tunes that I thought my kid would one day listen to as she sleeps. Since no one volunteered to help, I stood on a stool at 8 months pregnant and hung paper garlands over the window myself. And I did it all in the hopes that they would be pleased for me for just one afternoon. At first, it appeared as though it may possibly occur. A few family members arrived with wrapped presents. Baby books were brought by my aunt. "It looked like something I would have carried about as a child," my cousin commented, as she gave me a small plush fox. Perhaps, just possibly, this would be all right, I thought. My parents then onto the stage in front of everyone. As if to announce her own pregnancy, my mother cleared her throat and tapped her wine glass with a fork. My father was holding her by the shoulders. Before we cut the cake, I caught a glimpse of Roger moving from foot to foot and trying not to smile. My mother said in a sweet, syrupy voice, "We only wish to reveal a small surprise." That tone seemed familiar to me. I didn't have the moment. Holding the letter as if it were the Olympic torch, Roger took a step forward. "I got in," he remarked, smiling with Stanford's complete approval. Everyone gave a clap. Someone even gave a whoop. With a gasp, my aunt ran to give him a hug. 10 minutes ago, the same aunt was telling me how thrilled she was to meet my baby. The energy changed instantly. It was as if someone had opened a bottle of better news and everyone was inebriated. In less than 5 minutes, my baby shower evolved into a college acceptance party. It didn't have to be said aloud, but nobody did. It was a physical shift. Roger was scraped by the chair. My thoughtfully arranged snack table turned into a buffet for his congratulations. My cake remained undisturbed. Then his companions showed up. Not mine. A swarm of boisterous voices and senior high school students, with backpacks swarming in as if they owned the place. "Where's the party at?" yelled one of them, and another already had a speaker in hand. He is a loud bassist who drowned out the lullaby playlist and rattled the windows. I'd spent 2 hours curating. I was still holding a cup of ginger tea someone had handed me. Still wearing the soft pink sash my cousin bought that said "Mom to be." No one looked at me. They moved the gifts off the main table to make room for drinks. My mom told me casually that we'd cut the cake later when things calmed down. Then the cake got moved to someone set a soda bottle next to it which tipped, leaving a trail of fizz down the side. I picked up a napkin and started blotting it. The frosting had smeared onto the table. I got down on my knees to wipe it properly before it dried. And while I was kneeling, 8 months pregnant, wiping frosting off the floor like some afterthought made someone stepped over me to hug Roger. They didn't even say, "Excuse me." I stayed there for a few seconds, just crouched on the floor, hands sticky with icing, breathing in deep through my nose while they laughed and shouted over my head. I could hear Roger in the other room talking about campus visits and dorm preferences. My mom was bragging about the tutors they'd hired to help him reach his potential. The same mom who told me at 16 that college was a scam and I should just get a job at the supermarket. So I did. I worked shifts until my feet ached. Then came home and packed shipping boxes for my tiny online shop. I figured things out on my own. And when my business started to grow, I didn't ask them for anything. I paid bills. I saved. I bought this house with money they didn't even know I had, but somehow they still believed it was theirs. My mom once said I was lucky to be able to live at home during my pregnancy. She said it like she was doing me a favor, forgetting I paid the mortgage, the utilities, and even part of Roger's tutoring last year. It all played in my head as I slowly stood up, sticky napkin still in hand. I looked around the room. My decorations were crumpled. My baby name banner had been pushed aside to make space for a hand-drawn sign that said, "Congrats, Roger." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I walked to the kitchen, washed my hands, dried them on a dish towel, and I went to my room. I closed the door, sat on the bed. My back ached. My feet were swollen, but my head was clear. Down the hall, the music thumped like a pulse that didn't belong to me. I picked up my phone, opened a folder. I'd been quietly building for weeks. I didn't argue, but I also didn't forget. I used to think things were equal when we were little, that we were just two kids in the same storm, trying to stay dry under the same leaking roof. But when I look back now, really look, I can see the way the scales were always tipped, even in the small things. When I was 6 and Roger was 4, he threw my favorite doll in the fireplace. I cried for an hour. My mom told me it was my fault for leaving it where he could reach it. When I said that wasn't fair, she sent me to my room for talking back. Roger got dessert that night. I didn't. In 3rd grade, I won 2nd place in the spelling bee. I came home beaming. holding the ribbon like it was made of gold. My dad glanced at it and said, "Just a second. Maybe next year, when Roger won a participation medal in a soccer competition, they gave him a pizza party." When I earned a B on a math test in 8th grade, my dad responded, "Well, at least you're trying." When Roger received the same grade a year later, he got a tutor and a whole speech about unleashing his talent. I was expected to assist around the house because I was more mature. I cleaned dishes while Roger played video games. I cleaned while he received commended for remembering to take out the garbage once a week. I was told to be patient, to be appreciative, to set an example. The older I became, the more invisible I became. When I was 16 and declared I wanted to go to college, my mom quit college. For what? So you may waste 4 years and come out in debt. Oh, honey, you're better off finding a job and saving cash. So I did. I applied to everything: grocery shops, retail warehouses. I was employed at a bargain clothes store and worked the floor for Black Friday while Roger was still in middle school. He had 3 private tutors, a college prep coach, and a brand new laptop by the time he was 16. To pay for it, my parents took out a little loan. They referred to it as an investment. They never inquired about my need for assistance. I recall getting into a small vehicle accident on my way to work when I was 17 years old. I was shaken, but not wounded. From the side of the road, I called my mother. "You ought to have exercised greater caution," she replied with a sigh, then hung up. My dad left work early to go comfort Roger when he dented his fender in a parking lot 2 years later. At dinner that evening, he told everyone how mature Roger had been to contact him. I opened my web store when I was 19. It was simple. I merely sent clearance stuff from my bedroom and resold them. I occasionally slept off next to the printer while packing orders at night. I never disclosed to anyone how many returns I had to handle or how frequently customers became irate over delivery delays. I simply persisted, and gradually it became effective. It wasn't glitzy or exciting, but it was secure enough for me to leave my job and start a legitimate business. I didn't immediately inform my parents when I purchased the house. I just gave them the keys and welcomed them over. My mother sobbed. "Now that your sister has a place where we can all be together," my dad added, giving Roger a thump on the back. The next month, they relocated. They never inquired as to whether they need to pitch in, never offered to divide the expenses. They pretended that I was acting as any other daughter would. I ignored it. It was only temporary, I reminded myself. Perhaps if I provided enough, they would notice me at last, I reasoned. When I revealed my pregnancy to them, I anticipated shock, disappointment. What I received may have been worse. "Oh," my mother blinked. "Well, I suppose that's taking place." "Is the father in the picture?" my dad questioned. "No," I said. They gave a nod. "No follow-up?" "No." "Well done." The following evening after supper, they told Roger, "I guess we'll have to baby-proof the Xbox," he added, laughing. When I offered to employ someone part-time to handle some of my order fulfillment, so I could take some time off during the last few months of my pregnancy, I laughed too, but only because it was easier than sobbing. "Are you sure you can afford that?" my father inquired. "Roger's application fees, what about them?" I wish I could claim that's when I lost it, but I didn't. In a pocket already stuffed with stones, it was simply another one. Nevertheless, a silent movement occurred. I began to prepare, ask questions, and conduct research, because I had to defend my kid and myself if they weren't going to protect me. I didn't want her initial impressions of me being a resource, seeking person cleaning up after me. I didn't want her to discover that sacrifice and quiet were necessary to win affection. Thus, I continued to answer, "Sure, no problem," smile, and offer assistance. That baby shower was never truly for me, even though I continued organizing whenever someone asked for anything. Not to them. It was an opportunity to showcase together as hosts. However, it was also the final time I would permit them to do so. They simply weren't aware of it yet. It was too quiet in the home. It was the sort of quiet that was not tranquil. It was just like the last time. Scream as if something were about to happen, or as if your breath was held too long. The only sound in the world was the gentle hiss of the kettle as I stood in the kitchen making myself a cup of tea. The sun was just beginning to rise outside. Inside, the sink was overflowing with dishes from other people. and the countertops were sticky from soda spills. The notes were meticulously arranged by me, with one in the middle of the table and 3 more beneath, all of them bearing their names in big black letters. I sat down and rubbed my lower back softly as the baby inside me stirred. My head was clear, but my body hurt. They didn't comprehend how long I had been getting ready for this. My mother was being dragged by slippers when I heard the flooring in the hallway crack at 7:02 a.m. With a weary moan, she entered the kitchen and stopped in her tracks upon seeing the table. I kept my eyes off of her. I didn't have to. What is this? Her voice remained sluggish as she spoke. I took a drink of my tea. She took the first page and began to read. Her eyes widened and her mouth parted in around 5 seconds. What on earth is this? Her voice cut through the silence as she snapped. One more pause. Then she let out a cry. What is this, Lily? Not even the cup in my hand shook. I simply took another drink. My father blinked as if he hadn't quite woken up and staggered into the room in his robe. A beat later, Roger yawned and rubbed his eyes. What's happening? My father mumbled. We are being evicted by her. Waving the paper in the air as if it had caught fire, my mother yelled. Roger came to a complete stop. What? He croaked. At last, I raised my head. I gave you 30 days. Everything is in writing. You're joking, my father said as he moved forward and grabbed a copy for himself. Isn't this a joke? This isn't possible. What is this? Yesterday, I dispatched the certified letters. Calmly, I said. It is anticipated that they will arrive this afternoon. This copy is merely a courtesy. Are you throwing us out? Roger's voice broke. What on earth is the matter with you? I'm reclaiming my home. My mother's hands trembled. Half of her voice broke. Following all that we have done for you, she let out a scream. Are you going to do this right now? When are you going to give birth? No, I said. I'm about to give birth, which is why I'm doing this. Roger slammed the table with his hand. The pile of documents slid and fell all over the floor. You're going overboard, he shouted. There was only one party, one foolish gathering that became a bit boisterous. Lily, Jesus. Just one party. I got up slowly. He attended my baby shower. It became a frat night because of him. You let people I didn't even know trashed my house while I was scrubbing frosting off the floor like the damn maid. We were celebrating, he shouted. It wasn't even a big deal until you made it one. My mom rounded the table like she might physically block me. This isn't just your house, she cried. We've lived here for years. Yes, I said rent-free. My dad stepped forward, arms out like a mediator. Come on, he said. We're family. This is just emotions running high. You don't really want us out. We'll clean up. We'll apologize. We'll make it right. I stared at him. No, I said. You'll gaslight me into thinking I'm overreacting like you always do. Then you'll go back to pretending this house and my life are yours to manage. My mom's face was red, now bright red. She looked like she might explode. You ungrateful little brat. You think you're better than us because you started a stupid online store? You think that makes you important? We reared you. We sacrificed for you. I chuckled quietly. Just one breath of incredulity. You sacrificed me for Roger. Every single time. My father's jaw stiffened. That's not true. I looked toward him when I wanted to go to college. He informed me it was a fraud. When Roger desired it, you spent thousands on tutors. When I worked night shifts, he urged me to stop complaining. When Roger worked one summer job, you labeled him responsible. I paid the mortgage. This house was purchased by me. You continued to refer to it as ours. Roger pushed back his chair. This is what you've been waiting for. Have you not been planning this the entire time? Yes, I said. Yes, I have. He gave me the impression that I had stabbed him. Your family is being thrown out for a minute over a pointless party. It's sick. I didn't say anything. For years, it was every minute. This just made it clear. Like a soap opera performer, my mother collapsed into a chair and began to sob loudly and dramatically. What will we do with our lives? What are we meant to do? What are people going to think? That is no longer an issue for me. We won't go, I said. Her eyes were wild when she snapped. You can't force us to go. Throwing your own parents on the street is not an option. I have, and I can, I said. She glanced down at the paper she was still holding. As she repeated the words, her lips trembled as if they could shift. "This is illegal," she said in a whisper. I extracted a folder by reaching into the drawer. Copies of the notification, the deed, and the certified postal receipts were all contained therein. I carefully placed them on the table. "Yes, it is," I said. I checked. Roger snatched up the folder and tossed it across the room, scattering the papers like snow. He said, "You're heartless." "No," I said. At last, I'm defending mine. It was silent again, but not in the uncomfortable way. It weighed much, as I stood there encircled by the carnage they had created. Also, for the first time in a long time, cleaning up wasn't my responsibility. "By the end of the month, I want you all gone," I said. "If you need assistance packing, I've made arrangements for a buddy to help. Are you not being serious?" "You'll change your mind," my father remarked. I gave him a direct look. "No, I won't," I answered. Then, past the ripped streamers, the wilting balloons, and the ripped edges of the banner that previously spelled my daughter's name, I turned and walked back to my room. I was over being invisible, even though they had eliminated me. 2 of the first 3 days were strangely calm. The home fell into a weird limbo, where no one looked at me, and I didn't attempt to be noticed, which surprised me because I half anticipated more yelling and more slamming of doors. They moved in a ghostly manner. Roger turned off his room's loud music. My mom stopped acting like she was cleaning the kitchen. In reality, she never cleaned. Hours passed while my father sipped the same cup of coffee on the balcony. I knew the stillness wouldn't last, but I was hardly moved. The call started on the 4th day. Aunt Rachel was the first to text, followed by Uncle Ted and my mom's church buddy, who hadn't talked to me in 3 years. "Sweetheart, we truly worry about you." Worried? Correct. My mother had clearly started her campaign. I had been portrayed by her as hormonally unstable, most likely not thinking clearly due to the pregnancy. She is making snap judgments. "I told someone," she said. "I noticed the mail that a cousin shared to me. She needs assistance, but we don't want to cause her any worry." In order to make me feel like the villain, they were manipulating it to look like affection and worry. My father wished to speak the next day. "We will begin to contribute," he added. "Bills and rent. We need to have taken that action earlier." "You're correct." As if it were a sacrifice for peace, he stated it. As if everything had been erased. "You had years. You didn't just forget," I said. "You decided not to. But consider what this looks like to the rest of the family," he continued after nodding. The humiliation card was there. Grinning, I turned to go. 7th day. Roger attempted another strategy. "Over dinner, I spoke with Coach Harrison," he said. "He warned that I might lose my scholarship if I postponed it for another year. We must relocate immediately. I have trouble concentrating. I am unable to sleep at all." I gave a nod, difficult. He yelled, "You don't even care. When I was 8 months pregnant and cleaning frosting off the floor, you showed no concern." With a slam of his fork, he rushed away. "All right, Dayton." My business partner called me. With hesitation, she said, "Hey, just a heads up. You're emotionally unstable and may not be able to manage the business after the baby is born," according to an anonymous email I received. They advised me to begin searching for new leadership. For a brief instant, my stomach sank. I took a screen grab of the email and compared the wording to other communications my mother had sent, and it was exactly the same. I didn't respond. I sent it to my attorney. Day 12. They gave up acting. I was cornered in the corridor by my mother. She growled, "I know you think you're strong now. We'll see how long this lasts, though. When the baby arrives and you're worn out and overwhelmed. When you realize you need us, don't come running back." I gave her a direct look. I've already come to that conclusion. Day 16. A note was left at the front door by a sheriff's officer. After reading it and opening it, my dad struck the wall. "Filing for court," he murmured. They had hoped I would give up, crack, or not proceed with the formal eviction. However, the documents were filed. The hearing was planned. I was not going to back down. Day 21. They made another attempt at guilt. In the living room, my mother cried so loudly that the neighbors might undoubtedly hear her enumerating all the things she had ever done for me. How she allowed me to reside in her house. How she protected me while I was pregnant. How she gave up her tranquility for me. I finished updating the baby registry while sitting in my room, with noise-canceling headphones in place. On the 25th day, Roger summoned his girlfriend over and said, "She's crazy in the kitchen. Without us, she will wreck her child's life." I responded, "You helped ruin my baby shower," as I entered and turned to face his girlfriend, who had attended. Before I compile a list of all the minors who consumed alcohol that evening and report it, including your name, you might want to leave. She became pallid. She chuckled. Day 28. They began packing. The luggage filled the hallway like specters. Reluctantly. A box here, a bag there. I refrained from boasting. I was unable to even grin. The home was half empty when I last waited on the 30th day. My dad didn't bid me farewell. He simply left without turning around. With her arms folded and tears in her eyes, my mother stood in the entryway. "You'll be sorry," she said. "Family endures forever." "I agree," I answered. "I'm constructing one that truly deserves to remain because of this." Roger came last. With his rucksack draped over one shoulder, he stood at the doorway. "You know," he added, "you're lucky. There would be no one to blame except me." I answered, "Then I suppose I'll get some peace at last." Rolling his eyes, he closed the door behind him and left. Quiet. Not the tense type, not the loaded sort, an alternative kind, a calm sort. In the middle of the living room, I stood. Without their belongings, the room appeared larger, more vivid, as if it too had been holding its breath. I went to the nursery, opened the closet, put a soft pink blanket in the cot, and folded a couple onesies. The wind blew softly through the trees outside. For the first time in my life, I felt secure as I sat down and put a hand on my stomach. I made it that way, not because someone else did. Update. 4 years have passed. Last month, my daughter began preschool. She informed me she was going to teach everyone how to draw clouds while sporting a little purple knapsack. She is strong-willed, inquisitive, and friendly. She is a better version of me. It is still in operation. Even when it was a baby, I never had to turn it off. We reached 6 digits for the first time last year after I brought on 2 additional staff members. These days, I work less hours. I don't have to work as hard as I formerly did. I can now simply be myself. My family departed, and we haven't talked since. Neither they nor I have made an effort to get in touch. However, family members speak. At weddings and funerals, whispering is a common practice. Roger left after his first year, based on what I've heard. He needed someone to clean up after him in order to keep up. It didn't last long when my parents moved in with one of my uncles. Apparently, 6 months later, he ejected them. Something about my mom being a nightmare and outstanding payments. They're struggling. And no, that doesn't make me feel good. However, I don't feel bad either. I kept giving them chances. When they wouldn't give me what I asked for, I ultimately quit trying to get everything. Family is unconditional, according to some, but respect ought to be. That's the update, anyhow. Do you believe I made the correct decision? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. And remember to subscribe for more articles like this one.